in the cross-examination, you should be talking. The only words that should be coming out of their mouths are yes, 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 yes. So you want to formulate it so they are so constricted in that the only thing they can do is say yes, even though they understand that you are painting a picture that just sinks their ship. There's nothing they can do. Now, if they go, well, wait, now that's not exactly, I know what you're doing here. You're painting a picture that this is like way too expensive and that's not right. Okay, so all of a sudden they kind of burst out and they're weaseling. They're weaseling. So what you want to do is hold the weasel. So how do you hold the weasel? You say, like he's going on and on about how, making it sound so, well, let me explain. It's not that expensive because if you take the price of gold with the stock exchange and da-da-da-da-da. Okay, Mr. 1AC, we will get to that in a moment. Let me take the weasel from you and put it over here and we'll get back to my questions. So you basically, you don't start arguing with him. You say, we'll get to that in a moment. And you take the weasel and put it over here. And at least for a while, he's going to think the subject's going to get changed. But what you've done is just basically taken command of the examination. And go on. So now, let's just look at another example of this where you're impeaching by innuendo, have a few fact points or themes for your cross-examination, and this is the other thing. Don't ask the other side the ultimate question, trying to get the witness to admit that they are wrong or that their story is a lie or that you should win. The witness, your opponent, will never, if ever, do that unless they're just really, really don't know what they're doing. Okay, so here's the wrong way. Isn't it true that your plan to enact federal subsidies for home gardens would cost lots and lots of money? I wouldn't say lots and lots of money. See, a characterization word. I'm not sure what you mean by that. I would say it would cost a reasonable amount in light of the great benefit it would bring to society of well-fed children and surpluses to help starving people around the world. It would be well worth the $500 billion annual cost. See, you ask a characterization question, they quibble, and then they just run around like a dog off the leash. Okay. And who would have time to tend their gardens? This is ridiculous. For things that are important, people will find time, and they will have higher energy levels from eating fresh salads and vegetables made in their gardens. I can smell the soup cooking now. Yummy. See, okay, that person has totally lost control of the cross-examination. But now, what they're trying to say is their 1AC is we need federal subsidies for home gardens. So they're thinking, okay, there's people that don't live in places where there's no land to have a garden, so that's not going to help them. It's going to take time. It's not going to be worth it. It's going to be really time-consuming, expensive, etc. Now, watch how, now I just made this up, but how this is done by impeaching by innuendo, fact questions, done with leading questions. Your plan would cost more than the budget for the Department of Defense. Yes, it's either true or it's false. Your plan would cost more than Social Security. Yes. In fact, your plan would cost more than every program in the federal budget. Well, I'm not exactly sure. That's fine. They're not disputing it. Your plan would cost more than the budgets of Russia, China, and France combined. Now notice, every question I've asked is, this is really expensive, is the only point. But you've asked it about 4 different ways to reinforce it. Now, in debate, there is a particular reason why you want to do it. You may think like, well, I can just say it once and I'm done. Why do I got to keep repeating it? Okay, first, if you repeat it, the judges, if they are dense, well then you have more time to I get it, the light goes on. But this is the other thing. If the point of the cross-examination, if one point is to give time for your partner to prepare for his or her presentation, then, and you're thinking like, I don't have enough stuff here to kind of, use up all the time. Now I'll tell you, I just think it's a judgment call. If you're running out of stuff to say, I think it'd be better to sit down. But let's just say, no, my partner really needs the time to prepare. Then what you do is you keep repeating the concepts and keep asking the same question different ways because you're scoring points and you're using up time. So that's why it costs more than Social Security. It costs more than the Department of Defense. It costs more than the budgets of China, Russia, and France combined, wouldn't it? And so you see that you're building the picture but also using up the time for your partner. Isn't it true that your plan would cost more than what Bill Gates earns in a year? Well, I'm not sure what he makes. So that's just a great line. And sometimes you can just throw that away. You know, that answer isn't going to hurt you. This is a program for people who live in homes with land for gardening. Yes. Now, even if they quibble, say, well, I don't know if they have to live in homes or something like that, then just break it down. Break it down. Well, it's for people who have land, yes, to do gardening. Yes. When you get a quibbler, like an uber quibbler, you break the questions down into more bite-sized fact pieces that they can't argue it. And so you just kind of like bring the restraints in on them to control them. So this is for people, yes, who have land, yes, to garden, yes. Okay, that puts a quibbler under control. But some people live in apartments. Oh, yes. Some people live in condos. Some people live in nursing homes. Some people live in college dormitories. Well, how can he argue? Yeah, there's people that live in college dormitories. But see, what you've done is, now see the difference. You could say, well, your plan isn't going to work because not everybody lives in a place where they have land available, so there's a lot of people that won't even be able to get this. Well, I don't know if I would characterize it as and they're running all around like the dog off the leash. Or like the monkey climbing around the room that you can't quite, get. But by asking it this way, some people live in condos. Some people live in apartments. See, can you see the difference of the discipline? If you do it that way, you're making exactly the same point, but their hands are tied. They really cannot, it's very, very difficult for them to break out of the box. Well, we have alternatives for them because they'd be able to, we're going to set up federal land on, a national forest for them to drive out to. Okay. Let me take your weasel. We'll talk about that in a moment. And you never get back to it. And we'll put the weasel over here and talk about what I want. People live in condos. People live in nursing homes. And see, you're not even saying people live in nursing homes and they can't use this. Like, even that, I think, is giving them more, you might, if you get good at this, try that. But you see, like, he can't argue. People live in nursing homes, but he knows exactly what you're saying is the people in the nursing homes won't benefit from this program. You get the idea. Okay. Number 6 is what I talked about with the using up the cross X time for your partner, is that you just want to keep doing this. I would say about the only time to ask a question that's not leading is if the person is incoherent and you didn't understand what their 1AC was. And I mean, if you really have to do that because, like, I have no clue what they're talking about, and say, now, can you explain again? Because if you say that, you're basically yielding your time to speak to them to restate how wonderful their plan is. So you have to have a very, very good reason to say, now, what did you mean by this? Or are you really saying that we're going to, execute people that don't put the gardens in? Did I hear that right? That just seems pretty weird. Like that. Like you really want to make sure that there's a good reason to ask the question. Do not ask open-ended questions unless you really don't understand some aspect of your opponent's plan, or maybe in rare circumstances your opponent doesn't know the answer or will flub the answer. Your prime directive, ask only leading questions that can be answered only with a yes or a no. And don't use characterization words. Your plan is dumb. Your plan is too expensive. Your plan is unworkable. Your plan, it doesn't take reality into account, or something like that. Those are all things people can argue with. If you conduct your cross